Hi, my loves, and welcome back to Love, Sex, and Magic with me, your host, Mel Wells. And today's episode is all about astrology, one of my favorite topics. And I'm joined with my dear friend, Sarah Thomas, also known as She Sees the Stars on Instagram. She is a dear friend of mine that I used to know from living in Bali. And she's also my go-to astrologer that I am always getting readings with when I need them. She's also our in-house astrologer inside the Goddess Collective, my membership, and she's actually coming out. She's flying out to Costa Rica this year for our members only retreat in Costa Rica, which I'm so excited about. So here's her bio. Sarah Thomas is an astrologer born in New Zealand, currently based in Bali, who's read the natal charts for hundreds of people, from successful authors, famous DJs, mums, students, and people from multiple cultures and all walks of life. As a kid, she was always obsessed with space and the mysteries of the universe, and after a powerful solo trip around India, she discovered astrology and never looked back, immediately becoming obsessed and studying Western astrology. Always being spiritually inclined and highly intuitive, she utilizes her intuition to read your astrological chart, providing more than an average reading and resonating with her clients in a profound way, giving deep clarity, insight, and guidance around your soul's path in this lifetime. So this conversation, we talk all about the happenings of the world. We talk about the collective astrological guidance and what's going on right now in our world and what is coming for the rest of the year. We talk about compatibility in relationships and dating. We talk about Saturn returns and just so much more. I absolutely love this topic. I could literally talk about astrology for hours and hours and still feel like I'm just scratching the surface. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Sarah, my love, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Hi, baby. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to be here with you. I love you. I love your work. I'm lucky enough to be friends with you, and I'm so excited to just get into it and get juicy and talk about the stars and all the good stuff.
So you are a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for many years from living in Bali together. And you're also now our in-house astrologer inside my membership, the Goddess Collective. And all of our girls absolutely adore your monthly energy readings. So I wanted to bring you on the podcast to share like all of your astrological wisdom with my larger community of listeners here. And I think one thing that I want to start with, because I've been getting so much more into astrology since knowing you and having all the readings and all of the time with you. And so I often bring astrology into conversations with people, like all the time, right? And one thing that I get asked is like, well, how do you really know that that's true? Like, how do you really base all of this stuff on astrology? And I start to be like, well, it's like ancient wisdom. Like, of course it's, but you are the expert. So I want to ask that question to you. If someone is asking, like, how can we base things on astrology? How can we really trust this knowledge? What would you say to them if they're a little bit more skeptical?
I think it all comes down to what resonates. And so for me, I read for maybe 4 or 5 people a day. I've never met them before. They are generally complete strangers to me. And within the first 30 seconds to, a couple of minutes, they feel fully seen. So for me, through my own experience of reading charts for people, it's been confirmed for me because I'm seeing it in practical, tangible, visceral form, that the message and the things that are coming through are resonating deeply with people. And that's why my business is my business, because it's resonating, it's striking a chord with people. And I think with anything in life, with the media, with numerology, with a conversation, with something that we're being told or translated, how do we ever really know that it's true? To me, it's what resonates. And I think the beautiful thing about astrology is we're going to a deeper level, and it is hard to explain until you've had the experience. I will say that. I think, you know, like anything in life, it's when you're actually sitting there in the present moment. So for my clients, for yourself, before we met, having a complete stranger see you completely in all of your forms, in all of your shame, and all of your gifts, in all of your experiences, describing your parents or your certain really pivotal and poignant events. There's certain things that come through in those readings that are impossible for me to know until I look at a birth chart. So I definitely do get a little bit passionate in the moment, but I understand why people would be skeptical, and I also think it's so worth it to be open to, because it's mind-blowing and it just opens up another level.
Absolutely. And I always remind myself of, like, when we really zoom far, far out, we are literally all in space. Like, we're all on this floating planet that's orbiting the sun with all of these other planets. And, like, of course we're going to be affected by that. Like, it would be actually quite wild to think that we're not.
I couldn't agree more. And I remember before I got into this as a business, I've always been so fascinated with space. I grew up in New Zealand. The stars are so clear where I come from. So for me, I was always so enamored by the Milky Way that I could see so clearly right above my head. And I've always had this deep fascination with the sky and with the stars. And I remember watching a documentary about astronauts, and it was a very sort of non-woo-woo documentary and conversation about some of the coolest experiences that these astronauts wanted to discuss. And the biggest takeaway from all of them was how, when you do zoom out, like, actually for them, literally being able to see our planet as a teeny tiny blue marble in a vast black universe, and the further away they got, the tinier we were, and eventually we're just this little blue speck. This, to me, they were sharing, was mind-blowing for them, and it opens up almost a spiritual understanding and something that maybe they weren't seeking, that was their greatest takeaway. And for me, I find that so impossible to not absorb. It's just it's amazing. The more I do this work, the more I recognize how little we know, and it's very humbling.
Yeah, absolutely. And every time that I get a reading with you, or just really look at my my chart, it's mind blowing. It's so accurate that it's like, how can you not trust that? Like, how can you not really see that as ancient wisdom? So now I'm like, every time I meet someone, I'm like, what's your chart? What's your big three?
Yeah. I get so many clients giving me all their boyfriend's information or all their partner's information. People, they want to know, they want to dig deep. And I think one really beautiful takeaway from all of the things that we have lived through in 2020 was people are willing to look deeper. They're actually opening up their minds more than ever. It's sort of becoming more mainstream to talk about this stuff, to zoom out a little bit and look into philosophies. And I love seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, Sarah, what does the rest of the year have in store when you look at the planets, when you look at what 2021 has for us? What are you predicting?
Yeah, so we're in the thick of it at the moment, to be honest. And looking back over 2020, a lot of the planetary alignments that happened for us last year were huge and very significant, and kind of once in 800-year transits. And the planets, they have these characteristics. Some represent femininity, some are masculinity, some are malefic, some are benefic. Last year, we had Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in what we call a conjunction, all within the same degree in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is all about sort of our material world, our economy. It's very patriarchal. Saturn is karmic cycles. It's a bit of a tough love planet. Pluto is trauma and transformation. And Jupiter brings about this international sort of flavor, so it would impact the whole world. So I remember looking into this before everything unfolded and kind of thinking, holy shit, this is going to be a year that's written about in the history books, and we need to kind of buckle up because this is going to be big. And one thing that's really fascinating about astrology is looking into the history of the placements and seeing, well, what happened last time, these two were next to each other. So when we had Jupiter and Pluto next to each other, for example, in a conjunction, we had the AIDS pandemic, we had the Spanish flu. When we have Saturn and Pluto in conjunction, we had the world wars, the international tension and wars. So the history and the cycles of these planets, they really speak for themselves. 2021, I will say, is a little softer because the conjunction, which in sort of, that's kind of like an astrology 101 class, but a conjunction means the planets are sitting very close to each other in the sky at a very similar degree. This has softened. Saturn has now moved into Aquarius. Jupiter also moved into Aquarius at the same time. They kind of coupled in there together. So, that was a really significant event. But this has softened, this sort of regimented fear of 2020. Now we're in the next chapter, and things are always shifting. The planets are like immobile. I always think maybe we're just in a little glass jar in an alien's bedroom somewhere in another galaxy, but they're always circulating. They're always creating conversations in the sky. And, a lot of things are happening this year. Saturn, which is a planet of the old way, the traditional way, this regimented kind of structure, and then Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, they are in this big conversation of tension all year, which we would call a square, which is an angle that's kind of a little abrasive in the sky. So essentially what we are witnessing is a bit of a divide in consciousness, and people are going to choose, I feel, one side or the other. And I think one is the old, the regimented, they're looking for safety, grasping onto fear, and the other is maybe more of this Uranian energy, this Age of Aquarius energy, which is more of a rebellious, revolutionary, open-minded and progressive energy. So the two are going sort of at each other all year.
This is wild, because this is literally what is happening in our world right now. The world is being divided into these two camps, people who are going along with the rules, conforming, doing what the government and society is telling them. This is what you need to do to be a good citizen. This is the box that you need to fit into. These are the rules to get your freedom back. And then you've got the people who are more on the Aquarius side, which, hello, is obviously me because I'm Sun Aquarius, Moon Aquarius, North Node Aquarius. And I'm like, there is absolutely no way that I'm doing that, because I have this strong sense of revolution is about to happen. We are here for that revolution. And, similarly to all my friends who are also in the same camp as me, which is about, I don't want to create more division by saying this, but that is literally what is happening in our world right now. We are being divided into these two worlds, and there are the people who are focused on raising the consciousness, light workers, and actually rebelling against this old way of doing things, because we can feel intuitively that something isn't right, and that actually we're being pulled forward into actually a revolution and standing up to the system that is not actually caring about us, not actually for the people, but for profit instead. That's what I see happening in our world. And it's crazy that this is literally what is happening with the planets. We have the Capricorn and Aquarius and Capricorn and Aquarius conjunct. Is that what you said?
Basically, yeah. So Saturn rules Capricorn, Uranus rules Aquarius, and these two are in a square. So they're battling it out in the sky at the moment.
Wow.
And we are seeing this reflected in the world, and we are seeing this reflected internally in our personal lives as well. So what is happening in the societal reflection, the external reflection of our planet, is also happening on a microcosmic level within us. So a lot of us are having these personalized experiences of, am I going to see my own fear, and am I going to choose a new way? Am I going to stay stuck in my limiting beliefs? Am I going to choose a new way? Am I going to be brave enough to accept myself, which is very Aquarian, and revolutionize against this capitalist world that is telling me I'm not good enough? Can I do that? And it's important for us to see each other without the lens of judgment, because some people have had a lot of trauma. Maybe they're not ready for that yet. But it's the ones that are the way showers that can inspire the rest of us to, if we can follow our truth and be brave and be courageous and love ourselves against the current that says we shouldn't. If we can, find the courage and the self-belief and find our tribes to support us in that, then we have the ability to inspire the others in a new way. And I do feel this will take time to play out, and we are watching it, unfold.
Yeah, what is the timeline that you see? Because we are living in the Age of Aquarius right now. Does that mean that we were in the Age of Capricorn? Is that how it works?
Kind of. So, different astrologers have different systems, but Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions, they have been happening in Earth signs for the last 200 years. And, Saturn is karma, karmic cycles, and Jupiter is sort of the world, this expansion, the different philosophies that we're buying into and believing. And so these two have been sort of setting the tone and meeting up in the sky in different little cycles for the last 200 years in Earth signs. So Earth in astrology is more the materialistic stuff. It's more the regimented structures. And there was a certain time in our evolution as human beings where that was probably appropriate for whatever reason. Yet now this is happening in air signs. So, this Jupiter and Saturn conjunction that we witnessed at the end of last year, that happened in Aquarius. So that was kind of the next chapter of the book, happening in an air sign. So when we move into air signs, it's not so much about the materialistic money in the bank or the kind of concrete rules and structures that we have been basing our worth on. It's now more about our belief systems, and it's wild to think of the things that will come through during this time. I think technology is going to skyrocket to a point that we just couldn't even comprehend. I think there'll be a lot of space news. I believe we are really it's going to be a very fast exponential growth in how we communicate, AI, space news. This is a really poignant and very pivotal time. It's cool, and it's also daunting in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that in my bones. Like, I feel that everything you said, the space news, the technology news, like, this feels so like it's literally happening right now. But we need to evolve our consciousness to a level where we can actually handle that, because right now that's like outgrowing us. Like, we can't even handle the technology that we've got right now.
Well, I know that I certainly can't. I am pretty when it comes to that world. But I think what's important to remember throughout all of these external things that are shifting and that will continue to shift very quickly is, we're here to have an experience. We are in these meat suits. We're actually souls having a human experience. And this sounds woo-woo now, but as time catches up, this will be more accepted. It's almost like we're in a video game and this is our avatar, and we're here to have an experience. So it's really important for people to stay centered within themselves. And if we are looking or seeking for validation out from the external world, this can be a very terrifying time, because the external world is moving and shifting and changing so quickly. It's so important that we all get really grounded in our essence and in our truth, and in a deep connection to our sovereignty and who we really are, so that we are that oak tree with the roots planted really solid in the soil, because the external stuff is going to change and shift fast, and that can be very discombobulating, and it can sort of perpetuate more fear. So I think the most important thing about the Age of Aquarius is to get comfortable with who you are and don't seek permission from the external world to validate you in that. Figure out your values, get clear on self-care and looking after yourself and what matters to you, and following that gut instinct of what is true, because right now we are in the middle of eclipse season. We have a Mercury retrograde, which is muddling up the information. We have, Neptune in the mix, which is a planet that creates a lot of fog and a lot of disillusionment, and sometimes it can feel very unclear. So with a Mercury retrograde and a difficult conversation with Neptune in the middle of eclipse season, which is big fated events, these eclipses are happening in the sign of Gemini and Sagittarius, and the North Node is in Gemini, which is information and learning and opening up our minds. The South Node is in Sagittarius, which is a beautiful energy, but the shadow side, and the South Node is showing us what we need to let go of. The shadow side of Sagittarius is regimented belief systems and self-righteousness. So in a nutshell, we are going to be, for the next 6 months, absolutely bombarded with information from both sides. The truth is somewhere in the middle. We're going to be getting all of these extremes coming at us, and that can be very scary if you're someone who seeks for external validation or seeks to be told where to go and what to believe. There's going to be so many contrasting things, so that can be a daunting experience. It's almost like collective gaslighting on both extremes, and that's very psychologically stressful. I think we will start to see people really going through a bit of psychosis because they're looking for that safety net. They're looking for that safe place to land. And with all of the planetary energies, we're not necessarily going to know for sure what that is. But the more that you come home to self and the more that you get centered within your own sense of values, and like we talked about before, how do we know, what's true? It resonates. And like you said before, you can feel it in your bones. We really want to be sort of tapping into a deeper level within ourselves so that our intuition can help us to navigate what feels true for us. And rather than believing what we're told, we want to sort of discern what resonates for us on a soul level, and that can help us alchemize this time and actually start to see some truths in a different and more unique way.
Beautiful. It's so powerful, and I think that just makes it land even more, like hearing what the planets are all doing and then seeing it play out in our world in such a strong way. It's like, of course, it all just makes complete sense to me. And like you said, like, how do we know? We feel it. And I think that's what we need to really come back to more and more, is our intuition, like feeling when our body is giving us a yes and giving us a no.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I certainly for myself know what it feels like to be in that place where my body's giving me a no, but my ego and my mind have had this idea of what I was attached to. And I think attachment to the external world can keep us in fear. Attachment to having to need things to go a certain way, having to make something work. This attachment can actually be a huge contributor to fear. When we detach from the external stuff and we just know that we're the oak tree with really solid roots, and no matter what storm comes, we're okay in here, we've got this, we're listening to our gut, we're present, we're here, we know our values, we surround ourselves with people who have similar values, then the external world may be, but we're okay. And, that's a big, massive fuck yes when it resonates. And we know that, and this is something that we're not taught. In a way, I think just different people, different systems, different institutions have been sort of hoping that we'll stay in that place of the leaf blowing in the wind, because we're a lot easier to control when we are in fear or when we are seeking that validation. And it's detaching from all of that and finding that within ourselves that can help us get through this very transitional time.
Beautiful. So I want to pivot slightly and talk about relationships. There's kind of like a running joke in the spiritual community of like women just always want to know like what time was their potential partner born, so that they can look at their astrology chart. And I obviously love to do this as well. And we had a reading together, you and I, when I was going through my recent breakup. And I remember just being mind blown by what you told me when you looked at my chart, because literally I felt like this breakup came out of nowhere. Like I was not expecting it at all. But then when you looked at my chart, you said, yeah, Pluto is over Venus right now. Was that it? Pluto is over Venus, or Pluto is conjunct with Venus, which meant the transformation or the death of relationships at that exact time. So that was always going to be what I experienced. And then there was Saturn. You can correct me, I'm probably saying this wrong, but I remember there was Saturn over my sun and moon, which meant I was going to experience depression, which I did. And I'm not prone to depression, thankfully, but I definitely experienced depression around that time. And it was, I'm probably getting the astrology wrong here, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what
okay. But I was like, oh my God, this was always meant to be at this exact time in my life. And it blew my mind.
I think this is one of the most healing components of astrology, because it validates your experience and it helps us make sense of certain things that are happening in our external reality. And I remember having this experience myself. The reason that I got into this was because I also had that mind-blowing wow moment, jaw on the floor moment of, how is this person seeing me? They've never met me before. And I was at that point in time in India, and I was going through a breakup, and I was in the middle of my Saturn return, and I had a total stranger tell me every single thing that was happening in my reality. And I remember thinking, I wonder if this guy's got Facebook, and he's like this little guru. There was no way that he could have known. And I sobbed throughout that entire session, and I giggled a couple of times, but it was very healing to have somebody validate my experience and make me realize I hadn't done anything wrong. There is such thing as destiny. I really believe there is such thing as destiny and fated events and, different karmic cycles that we live through. And I also believe in the law of attraction. So I believe an astrology chart can show us what we're prone to want, what we're prone to look into. And when we look at a birth chart, we can see these cycles. And in a way, it's almost like weather forecasting. It's kind of, I can tell you to put your rain jacket on or put your sunscreen on, metaphorically speaking. It's also just so healing when you're going through something so huge. I think one of the things we all worry about so much is, am I making the wrong decision? Is this the right thing? Am I showing up how I'm supposed to? Have I made a huge mistake? There is no such thing as that. It's all karmically, divinely orchestrated to help you grow as a soul. And when someone can help validate that for you and give you permission to just be in your presence, it's huge.
So beautiful. So when it comes to like relationships, compatibility, is there any advice that you can give everyone listening that like wants to, look at their chart and compare it with their partner or potential partner, and like, what is your advice for that? Because we can get carried away with it, but also it's often very, very accurate.
Yeah, I mean, we are all little unique fingerprints, and some of us match better than others. I think if you're at the point where you're digging around your boyfriend's chart because you're just not communicating and you're wanting to know if you're compatible, I would say trust your instinct that if you're looking and things are playing out that you're not compatible, then maybe you're actually not compatible. I think we as women, we like to think we can mold and shape things to be what we want them to be. People are who they are. We're very unique. Opposites do attract those, so that is a truth. I think, the standard sun signs, you can actually see if sun signs are going to communicate well. So, for example, you're a sun sign in Aquarius, I'm a sun sign in Libra. These are both air signs. So we think the same. We can communicate really well. But then someone might then have, their moons could be oppositioned in it. So therefore, the way they process their emotions can be very, very different. So I think, all of us are multifaceted like a diamond, and it's not so simple as, is it a match or isn't it? We have to look at all the different angles and kind of see, well, in this way it can be, in this way maybe not. So when you do look at a synastry chart, there's so many little different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And some of them are very indicative. For example, like if you have maybe the Venus are in conjunction with the planet of love, if they're in a nice relationship, that can be a big yes from the universe. There's certain points that, can show a karmic relationship, but I also think we should try our best not to get too obsessive. If it's compatible and it's working, great. If it's triggering and it's not compatible, move on.
Yes, I love that. Are there any signs that you see as being like super compatible? Like, do you always see, for example, like a Taurus and a Scorpio, or an Aquarius and an Aries, or like, are there any things that you can kind of give us that are like those two always tend to make a good match?
Yeah, I think I notice a lot of Gemini Aries couples because Gemini people tend to be very sarcastic and very funny. Aries people are very assertive, so I find they tend to be very have a really strong sense of humor. So the fire and air, especially Gemini and Aries, tend to go very well together. Libra and Taurus tend to flock together because they're both ruled by Venus, so they love and appreciate the beauty in life. But, it's so unique. This is the thing about birth charts, is they're very, very unique. So, for example, you're an Aquarius. Let's say somebody's a Sagittarius rising, but they have Uranus conjunct their ascendant. That means that they have a huge Uranian undercurrent in their soul, which means they're going to think a lot like an Aquarius, but they might not have any planets in that sign. So it's so intricate. It's so intricate, really. Yeah.
Right. And do you see any correlation with so for example, in my chart, I have like Sun and Moon both in Aquarius, air. Then I have Pisces rising, which is water. Then I have a lot of Earth. I have a lot of Capricorn planets. Yeah. Do you see any, when it comes to the different elements, do you usually see fire and air go together, or Earth and water often attract? Is there anything like that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the time if somebody is missing an element in their birth chart, so let's say for me, I don't have a lot of fire. I'm a very soft person. I've had to teach myself self-confidence and self-assertion because I just didn't have any fire in my toolkit. I have always gravitated towards men who have a lot of fire because it makes me feel complete. As a unit, they might not have a lot of water. I have the water, they have the fire. As a unit, you can come together as teamwork and have, this really well-rounded perspective on things. So I do find, for example, my clients who have no earth will often end up with an earth sign because it fits the piece of the jigsaw puzzle and helps balance out their overall life.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping. That makes a lot of sense, babe. I think I'm the same. I think I don't have any fire in my
you're
chart.
Like, no, yeah. We're very similar like that. all the air, all the water, all the feelings, all the thinking.
I love it. So my next question is, can you help us understand the difference between the astrology that we are used to seeing and then Vedic astrology, which is something that people are more starting to speak about now?
Sure. So Vedic astrology is like an ancient Sanskrit system, and I use Western astrology, which is basically two different vehicles to the same destination. So people can get really up in arms about this because they'll have their favorite and then they'll go for the other reading. And for example, as a Libra sun, if I go for a Vedic reading, I would be a Virgo. So what I tend to find is if you have your sun in a certain zodiac sign, there's planets that don't gravitate very far from the sun. They're always in quite a close proximity to the sun. So for example, Mercury and Venus are close to the sun. So for you, you're an Aquarius sun, but you have Venus in Capricorn right next door. So they tend to stay in the same sort of little pool, a lot of the personal planets. In Vedic astrology, if you go and see a Vedic astrologer, they will tell you about your placements. And a lot of the time, you might have Venus and Mercury in that sign because it's close to the sun. So it will still translate because you will love in that style and you will think in that style. The other thing is Vedic astrology focuses on something called the nakshatras, which is the moon sign. So they tend to dive in a little bit deeper to your moon and where the moon is at your birth. In Western astrology, we look at the full picture. Vedic astrology is based deeply on the moon, and I believe that still really resonates, and I think it's still very accurate. So my guidance is to explore both, and what I feel is you will come out with a similar message and a similar destination. It's just slightly different language to get there.
Okay, that's super, super helpful. Yeah, because I could imagine, I've not had a Vedic astrology reading because I do resonate so much with traditional astrology.
Yeah. Vedic was actually the first reading that I ever had, and it resonated so much. It was so accurate. But when I looked to study the Vedic, I couldn't understand it because it was all written in Sanskrit. So I went to the Western, and it was just, if not more accurate and more resonating for me. So I mean, I'm not going to pick a team, but I speak English more than, all of the Indian textbooks. So, yeah.
Totally. And then another question that I have is like around Saturn returns, because I think a lot of people that are listening to this are probably in the middle of their Saturn return and maybe experiencing a lot of shifts, or maybe they're kind of anticipating their Saturn return coming, or maybe they don't even know what Saturn return is. Can you share like how important this chapter of someone's life is and what it means and what's likely to be happening?
Sure. So Saturn in astrology is the planet that is associated with big karmic cycles. So he's kind of Father Time. And I think of his personality as, maybe that strict high school principal that really wanted the best for us, but had to discipline us. So when you look at your birth chart, wherever Saturn is an area of life where you will feel a lot of gravity and a lot of karmic hurdles and challenges. And that's a specific theme of life where you can learn and grow and shift a lot. And I find it's the planet of karma. So a lot of the time it's going to be associated with previous life karmic cycles. So we come into this lifetime and we see where Saturn is in our birth chart. And for example, if it's in the first house, you might have a very difficult time with self-acceptance of your body. First house is our physical identity. If it's in the sixth house, you might have some health challenges, or you might have to work very, very hard. The seventh house is relationships, so this can represent a divorce or a really challenging relationship experience, and so on and so forth. So the different houses represent different life themes. When it comes to a Saturn return, essentially what is happening is Saturn, this big grandfather time planet that does want the best for you but will teach you the hard way, has come all the way around the sun to the same degree as where it was at the exact time of your birth. So this usually takes between 28 to 31 years, depending on sort of, the cycles of Saturn, When this happens, we feel like the shit is hitting the fan and everything is going tits up, and it can be a really daunting time for us, depending on what area of life it is in. So it tends to be, we thought we had all the balls, juggling along just fine, and then everything shifts. And we then have to decipher where we're going to put the balls this next time around. So it's kind of this cosmic initiation from our youth into true adulthood. And we have to look at, what do I want to leave behind and what do I really want to take with me? And I find Saturn returns are famously considered to be difficult, but they're actually this big invitation to step up and to level up and to look at what we need to let go of to really live a life of true authenticity. And we will have one around the age of 30. We have another one around the age of 65, which is often associated with retirement. And then the last time around is sort of around the age of 95, which is often when we croak. So these are these big, very significant cycles. And I had my first reading in a Saturn Return, and it just helped everything make so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sarah, this has been so amazing. I absolutely love getting all of your wisdom, and especially love that we get to do this every month inside the collective. It's such an honor to have you there. I always ask my Love, Sex, Magic guests these 3 questions to wrap up the interview. The first one is, what is one thing that you're loving right now?
I am loving my dogs. I have 2 rescue pups here in Bali that are absolutely hilarious. One has epilepsy. The other is just the most affectionate little thing, and they constantly make me laugh, bring me into the moment, provide all the unconditional love a girl could ever need, and I feel that they rescued me.
Oh, I feel that
Yeah.
deeply.
Yeah.
Dogs are such angels. What is something that turns you on?
I love vulnerability in people, and I really appreciate when people show up without that ego guard, and they're brave enough to show themselves and be their real self fully in a really authentic way. So vulnerability and authenticity are 2 things that I am just so in awe and in love with.
Beautiful. And when was the last time that you experienced magic?
I would say today. I think this eclipse season and this Mercury retrograde has been testing me just as much as everybody else at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And today I did a meditation and I said a prayer, and I believe in angels. So I sort of said, okay, guys, can you bring in some extra angels? I need a team of angels. We've got lots of things to get done and it's a tense time. And I turned up to an appointment today, and I met the woman and I said, hi, my name is Sarah. And she's like, oh, hi, I'm Angel. And she had her little name badge on with the name Angel. And it was just very confirming of my prayer and my meditation. So that was magic.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Well, my love, this has been amazing. I could literally just sit and talk to you about astrology for hours. And
Me too. I can't come visit you in paradise. My goodness.
Please do. And like every time I have these conversations with you, I feel like I learn so much, but I also feel like it needs to go in. I need to understand it. I need to hear it over and over again for it to actually go in. It feels like learning a whole new language. So it does take time to understand.
That's it. It is a whole new language. It's very complex. I'm still learning, but it's very accurate. So,
yeah.
I'm obsessed, obviously.
Yeah, me too. So where can everyone come and find you to learn more, to book in for a personal reading and work with you even closely?
Sure. So I am not so great with the tech stuff, I have to be honest, but I have Instagram. So my Instagram is She Sees the Stars. And I have a website, sheseesthestars.com. And then, of course, I'm in your Goddess Collective. So, yeah, Instagram, website, Goddess Collective.
Amazing. And I also just have to say that you are going to be coming on our first members only retreat out here in Costa Rica in November, which we're so excited about.
My goodness, I'm so ready for a little adventure. I'm so ready. I cannot wait. So exciting. That's going to be super beautiful.
Well, we're going to head into the collective now and just take a few questions from our members. But for everyone else, Sarah, this has been so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Me too. Thanks for having me, babe. I love you. Anytime.
So, my loves, hope you loved that episode. And as always, if you want more from me and all of my guests, come and join us inside the Goddess Collective, where we actually have monthly energy readings with Sarah all about what is going on with the world right now. So it's really helpful and just very affirming and comforting to know and understand what's going on with the planet. So if you want to have more astrology in your life, come and join us inside the Goddess Collective. And for everyone else, I adore you. Please like and share this podcast if you liked it. And I'll see you next week on Love, Sex, and Magic. Bye for now.